Hello students, welcome back to another episode of Principles of Micro. We're in chapter 2 today. We developed what economic models look like. We started a simple model of trade. We developed the production possibilities frontier. Now we're going to use that to see how trade creates value. So here's a simple example. Keep things tractable. I'll just have two countries and two goods, and we'll make the Ppfs linear. So the way a PPF works, we can produce any point on the line or inside it, but not the points that are out there. So, my first question for you guys is about comparative advantage, where we defined that earlier. So, we said a country has a comparative advantage if they have a lower opportunity cost. Our opportunity cost is defined in chapter 1. That means the cost of the value of the next best option. So, as before, go ahead and pause the video here and think about those two questions. When you think you've solved them, press play and let's see if you're right. So, pause here. Alright, I'll assume you've given this some thought. So, it turns out that country B has the comparative advantage in hot dogs. Why is that? Well, we've got to think about, what is each country giving up to produce one more hot dog? So if you're in country A and you want to go from 0 hot dogs to 1 hot dog, that means you got to go from this point with 0 to this one with 1. Well, that's going to mean that you sacrifice 2 hot dog buns. So go from here to here, you got to sacrifice 2 hot dog buns to get 1 hot dog. In country B, it's different. So here, if you have 0 hot dogs, you're going to be up there. If you have 1 hot dog, you're going to be here. So going from those 2 points is going to involve sacrificing 0.5 hot dog buns. So what we've established is that to make 1 hot dog, in country A, you got to give up 2 buns. In country B, you only have to give up 0.5 buns. So country B is giving up less to make a hot dog. They have the lower opportunity cost, and therefore country B has the comparative advantage in hot dogs. Now let's move on to the next question. Which country has a comparative advantage in hot dog buns? That will be country A, so I'll go through the same kind of thinking here. So if you want to go from 0 hot dog buns to 1 hot dog bun, you're going to have to give up half a hot dog. So 0 buns means you have 1 hot dog over here, and 1 bun means you have 0.5 hot dogs. So going from 1 to 0.5 means you sacrificed half a hot dog. That's the story in country A. Let's look at country B. So if they have 0 buns, they're going to be way out here. To have 1 bun, they got to go over there. So going from here to there means sacrificing 2 hot dogs. So in country B, it takes 2 hot dogs to make 1 bun. In country A, it only takes half a hot dog to make a bun. The cost is lower in country A. I should say that the opportunity cost is lower in country A. They're giving up less. So that means A has the comparative advantage in hot dog buns. A quick remark. So it's actually impossible for one country to have the comparative advantage in everything. We won't prove that here, but it can be shown. Okay, moving on. So we establish which country has a comparative advantage in which good. So now we'll show the gains from trade. Here's how I'll do that. So first we'll assume there's no trade. For obvious reasons, each country wants to have the same number of hot dogs as hot dog buns. Having two buns without any hot dogs doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So they want to have equal number of hot dogs and hot dog buns, and they can't trade. So go ahead and do some math and try to figure out how much could each country produce if they can't trade and they have to have the same number of hot dogs and hot dog buns in each country. Oh, one last thing before you guys work on that. The most common wrong answer I hear is that a lot of students say each country can produce 0.5 hot dogs and 0.5 hot dog buns. That is not true. They can do better than that. See, 0.5 is on the interior here. So that is not the best. You can do more than that. So go ahead, pause the video, do some math, and figure out how much each country can produce. They want to have an equal number of hot dogs and hot dog buns. Alright, I'll assume you have made an effort to work that out. Let's go figure out what's going on here. So let's start with country A. So first I'll find their Ppf. So it's a straight line, and we know you find a straight line's equation by knowing its slope and its intercept. So our intercept is 2. To get the slope, we do rise over run. So I'll pick this point and that point. The rise is 2. The run is 1. It's downwards, so it's a slope of -2. So intercept's +2 and slope is -2. That means our equation is y equals 2 minus 2x. Now that equation alone is not enough to get us to the answer. That's because that equation gives us two unknowns, x and y, but only one equation. You know, typically you need, if you have two unknowns, you need two equations to solve for them. So we need to get a second equation. Well, that second equation comes from this condition. We said each country wants to have its number of hot dogs equal to the number of buns. So that means y equals x. So now I have two equations and two unknowns. That's something we should be able to solve. So we substitute in y equals x into this equation over here, and we're going to get x equals 2 minus 2x. And then we can add 2x to both sides. So that's going to go away over here, and we'll have a 3x equals 2. To finish it off, we can divide both sides by 3. That gives you x equals 2/3. Now we also know y equals x. In other words, hot dogs equal hot dog buns. So if x is 2/3, then y had better also be 2/3. So as promised, the answer is not 0.5. The countries can indeed do better than that. They can make 2/3 of a hot dog and 2/3 of a hot dog bun. Now I could take the exact same approach to country B. However, in this case, I have a shortcut. That shortcut is something called symmetry. You can see a country B's Ppf is just a rotation of country A's Ppf. So it's also 2/3 for them. So in this particular problem, because of the geometry, I got that shortcut. The Ppfs really were different substantially, and when it's not just a rotation, then you will have to solve for country B separately and use the exact same procedure. If you had a nonlinear Ppf, you can still solve it. Just means the math will be a bit more complicated, but same approach works. Alright, so that's what happens when there is no trade. So no trade means each country has 2/3 of a hot dog and 2/3 of a hot dog bun. Now I'll compare that to the outcome when there is trade, and that will show us that trade creates value. So I asked you guys earlier about comparative advantage for a reason. Comparative advantage is something we want to specialize in. We want to specialize where we have the lowest opportunity cost. So now we don't have to produce 2/3 hot dogs and 2/3 hot dog buns. We could produce more of one and less of the other and then trade for whatever we're missing. So now if we could trade what's the most hot dogs and hot dog buns that each country can have. So go ahead and pause the video here, give that some thought, and when you're ready, press play. So it turns out that if you allow trade, now each country can consume a full hot dog and a full hot dog bun. Here's how that happens. So country A has the comparative advantage in hot dog buns, so they're going to focus on that. They're going to make 2 hot dog buns and 0 hot dogs. Country B is going to specialize in hot dogs, so they're going to make 2 hot dogs and 0 buns. So country A has 2 buns but no hot dogs, so they're going to try to trade that extra bun for country B's extra hot dog. After that happens, each one has 1 hot dog and 1 bun. Well, it's a big improvement over what we had a few slides ago. Remember, when there was no trade, the best they could do was 2/3 each. So, as if by magic, trade created an extra third of a hot dog and an extra third of a hot dog bun in both countries. So yes, trade creates value. The intuition? When you have trade, you can specialize in what you do more efficiently, and you don't have to spend so much effort on things you don't do very well. That's how trade creates value. If someone else is more efficient at making hot dogs, let them make the hot dogs and trade for it. So here's another illustration of the same idea. So with trade, we can see 1 hot dog and 1 hot dog bun each. That's point C over here. If you're stuck on your own with no trade, your PPF is back here, and that point C was just not attainable. The same was true in country B. Their PPF was down here, and this point 1 hot dog bun was also out of their reach when there was no trade. So trade effectively expands your PPF, just like technology expands your PPF. So actually trade and technology have the same effect. They both expand PPFs. So you think that technology is a good thing, even though it might cause some temporary disruption and loss of jobs, helps everyone in the long run. Trade is the same thing, so you share the same feelings about trade. Now, my example, I realized, was about a very, very unusual case. We had just 2 goods and just 2 countries, and also we had linear PPFs. We also had goods that were, we'll talk more about this later, we call them perfect complements, goods that go together perfectly. Most of the time, well, we know we have more than 2 countries, we know we have more than 2 goods, and we know that PPFs are typically not linear. So, was that trade creates value story just an unusual result from an unusual situation, or does it apply more generally? The answer is it applies more generally. So my lesson there does not depend upon any of those strange conditions. What it really boils down to is whenever you have different slopes, then trade has the possibility of creating value. So here's a more general illustration. So let's go back to guns and butter, and here you have those more realistic nonlinear PPFs. Remember I said they're downward sloping and concave back in our earlier video. And if you had 3 or more countries or 3 or more goods, same stories apply there as well. So the slopes are different, so my claim was that there should be a possibility for trade to create value. Let's verify. If you're in country A, the slope is -2. That means it costs you 2 units of butter to make 1 additional gun. If you're in country B, the slope is 1. So that means it costs you 1 butter to make 1 more gun. So whenever the slopes are different as they are here, you always find some value in the middle, and that can help both countries. So let's imagine country A offers, I'll pay you 1.5 butters to get one more gun. Now, both countries could benefit from that. Let's verify. In country A, it normally costs 2 butter to get one gun. So if you only have to pay 1.5 butter instead, you're effectively getting a discount. So A is happy about that trade. So if A is benefiting from the trade, does that mean B is being harmed? Not at all. B is actually benefiting as well. In country B, they normally only get 1 butter for one gun. So if you're in country B and now someone's trying to pay you 1.5 butter for one gun, you're pretty thrilled about that. You're getting a price much higher than what you normally get. So yes, country B benefits as well. Now, to be clear, I'm not going to claim that both countries benefit equally. That's not necessarily true. So I picked 1.5 because that was kind of the most obvious number between 1 and 2, just splitting the difference. But you could have things like 1.1 butter for one gun would also benefit both countries. So perhaps country A would be happier about that than country B. So you normally pay 2, but now you're paying me 1.1. That's a really big discount for country A. Country B is getting 1.1 instead of 1. It's only a small extra payment, so maybe the benefits are not equally distributed. But just because the benefits are not equally distributed does not mean that one country is harmed and the other benefits. That's not the case. There are benefits for both, they just might be of different sizes. And that's not an argument for getting rid of trade or trying to restrict trade because, again, both sides are better off. They're doing this voluntarily. Now, to avoid confusion, comparative advantage is not the same thing as absolute advantage. So comparative advantage, you said, is you have a lower opportunity cost. Absolute advantage just means you can produce more with the same inputs. Now, it turns out if one country is just more efficient at everything, they can still benefit by trading with some less efficient country. That benefit arises if the slopes are different. So gains in trade depend upon comparative advantages, not absolute advantages. So don't be fooled by that. So here's country A and country B again in a different scenario. So we still have guns and butter, and A is just better making butter and better making guns, so you have to have better technology or something than B. Now, the slopes do differ, though, so A can still benefit by trading with their inefficient country B. So let's verify. So for B, the slope is 1, so rise over 1 is going from 1 over 1, so slope of 1 costs 1 butter to get one gun in country B. In A, the slope is 2. So rise or run, we have 3 for a rise and 1.5 for a run. 3 divided by 1.5 is 2. Translation, in country A, it costs you 2 butter to get one gun. So if folks in country A normally pay 2 butter for one gun, but in B they sell guns for just 1 butter each, then A can benefit by buying guns from country B. So even though B is just less efficient, they have worse technology, they can still benefit country A from trade. So one common objection is that I have not discussed a trade deficit so far. The short story is that the trade deficit causes a lot of worry among politicians and very little worry among economists. Why is that? That's because trade can take place across time. So maybe country B can make a lot of guns today and country A spends a lot of money buying them up, and then sometime in the future B decides to spend a lot of money on butter and the money then goes the other way. So because trade can even out like that over time, economists really don't worry about the trade deficit very much. Think about it another way. What's country B going to do with all the money it got from country A? They got this country A currency that can only be used in country A. Well, they just hold on to it. They're just stashing up a large bunch of paper money. That's not going to do you a lot of good. The reason why you have paper money is so you can buy stuff with it. So sooner or later, country B's got to spend that money on goods from country A, and the trade deficit is going to have to even out. Otherwise, you're just collecting paper that's not going to do anything. So here's a quote from John Cochrane. He's writing in the Wall Street Journal back in 2010. So worries about the trade deficit are not peculiar to the Trump administration. Actually, back in the Obama administration and earlier, before that, and many politicians before that were also aware of the trade deficit, and economists at the same time were largely unconcerned. So John Cochrane writes, since when is every trade surplus or deficit an external imbalance in need of correction? It makes sense for a country that has good investment prospects to import a lot of goods, run trade deficits, and borrow money. Years later, the country puts the resulting products on boats to pay the lenders back. And he finds a historical example where this happened. So back in the 1800s, we were pretty good investment. We wanted to build a lot of railroads to improve transportation across our gigantic country. And we borrowed money to do that. Now, after World War II, Europe was largely lying in ruins while the U.S. sustained much less damage. So we ran large trade surpluses then. We were selling goods to rebuild Europe. So it evened out. Something similar is bound to happen with the U.S. and China today. So we've bought a lot of goods from China, and we have a very large trade deficit with them. So they've accumulated a lot of dollars. They don't want to just add to their coin collection. They want to buy stuff with those dollars. So sometime in the future, they'll have to buy things from the U.S. and the trade flow will reverse. So again, trade deficit causes a lot of worry among politicians and very little worry among economists. That's not just my opinion. If you ask maybe 90 or 95% of economists, you'd also hear trade creates value and trade deficits are not really something to worry about. So it's actually not true that economists disagree on everything. There actually are some points of consensus, and just trying to get politicians to listen has been not been going very well. Not just true today, but also true for prior administrations. So that wraps up Chapter 2 on model billing and gains from trade. So be sure to tune in for our next episode. We'll go into Chapter 3 and learn more about microeconomics. In the meantime, stay safe out there and take care.